My wife let her male assistant into her exclusive private lounge. Victoria Quinn's private lounge was a symbol of her power, and also a testament to our intimacy. Besides her, only I had ever been allowed inside. But I found her assistant brazenly inside under the pretext of helping. In that moment, I knew this marriage couldn't last. Someone wanted to challenge the rules so they couldn't blame me for rewriting the ending myself. Later, Victoria Quinn, eyes red, asked me why I had undercut Quinn Corp, betraying them so thoroughly. I just smiled nonchalantly. Love is gone. I have to protect my own interests, don't I? One day, I went to Victoria Quinn's company to meet her at the agreed time. We were supposed to go to the Quinn family home together for dinner. Victoria's office was on the top floor. Past the secretarial area lay her exclusive space. The outer part was the reception area and her desk. The inner part housed her private lounge connected to a study. That place held special significance. It was her absolute private domain. Apart from me, no one could casually step inside. But when I entered Victoria's office today, I saw the door leading to that private area slightly ajar. Gently pushing it open, the scene inside stunned me. Ethan Larkin was in there. I knew him, the new assistant Quinn Corp had hired. Right now, he was standing by Victoria's desk, organizing documents. On the bar nearby sat a freshly brewed cup of coffee. He seemed a little surprised to see me, but his face quickly broke into a smile, eager to please. "Mr. Sterling, you're here. President Quinn asked me to wait for her here." He paused, and to help her with a few personal matters. He gestured towards the documents in his hand and the coffee. President Quinn said she'll be right back. I didn't speak, just looked at this man who shouldn't be here. His words felt like a sharp sting. Personal matters. What personal matters of Victoria's required his handling? In this place practically sealed off from outsiders except for me, I remembered Victoria saying this was where she could completely relax, where she only showed her truest self to me. But now, Ethan Larkin stood here, organizing her documents, brewing her coffee, with an air almost like the man of the house. Though he appeared humble, his eyes and tone subtly hinted at his special status with Victoria. I once thought my marriage to Victoria was different from the typical arranged marriages between families, that we had genuine affection. But looking at it now, it seemed we weren't so different from those couples after all. 2. I suppressed the turmoil welling up inside, refusing to lash out at Ethan Larkin. That would make me look petty, like I cared too much about him. I simply regarded him coolly. "Oi, you're not needed here. Get out." The smile froze on Ethan Larkin's face. He probably hadn't expected me to be so direct. A flicker of embarrassment crossed his eyes, but he quickly lowered his head. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Then he put down the documents and coffee and quickly left the lounge. I stood in the empty room. His presence seemed to linger in the air, making me feel physically uncomfortable. I walked to the window, watching the bustling traffic below, but my mind couldn't find peace. A few minutes later, Victoria returned. She looked surprised to find me standing alone by the window. "Sincere, you're here. Where's Ethan?" I turned around, looking at her. I told him to leave. "Victoria, have you forgotten the rules of this lounge?" My tone was calm. Victoria paused, then brushed it off casually. "Oh, that. I just had him come in quickly to find a file for me. It was just for work, don't overthink it." She tried to put her arm around my shoulder. He's new. Probably doesn't know the rules. I evaded her touch, looking directly into her eyes. "Victoria Quinn, this isn't about whether he knows the rules or not. And you know what this place means to us. I don't want a third person casually entering. This is the first time." My voice was low, and I expect it to be the last. "I will not tolerate my private space being invaded by anyone. And no matter who it is, for whatever reason." The easy expression vanished from Victoria's face. She looked at me, her eyes complicated. After a few seconds of silence, she nodded. "Okay, I understand. It won't happen again." Her tone sounded sincere enough, but I wasn't reassured. 3. The atmosphere was heavy on the drive to the Quinn family home. Victoria tried several times to start a conversation, but I responded tersely. At dinner, we maintained a veneer of harmony in front of the elders, but we both knew deep down something had changed. Back at our own home, Victoria finally couldn't hold back. She hugged me from behind, resting her chin in the crook of my neck. "Sincere, are you still angry about this afternoon?" Her voice held a hint of weariness and pleading. "Ethan really is just my subordinate. I have no other intentions towards him." I didn't pull away, just said softly, "Victoria, what I care about isn't who he is, nor whether you have other intentions towards him." I turned to face her. "What I care about is boundaries, the exclusivity that should exist between us. Your private lounge is our space, just like this home, and I don't want others intruding so easily. It makes me feel like our relationship is no longer special." Victoria looked deeply into my eyes. "I'm sorry, Sincere, and I was thoughtless. I didn't consider your feelings." She took my hand. "Rest assured, nothing like this will ever happen again. That lounge, besides you, no one else can just walk in," she promised me solemnly. The peace didn't last long before new trouble arose. This time, the news came from my assistant, Zachary Shaw. Zachary had been with me for many years, loyal and capable, and he had his own information channels within Quinn Corp. While reporting on work, Zachary mentioned casually, as if in passing, "Son, I heard President Quinn recently gave Ethan Larkin an invitation to the Summit Private Club. Say apparently told him he could bring friends along to experience it." The Summit Club? I knew the place, an exclusive haven for the city's top magnates and elites. Membership screening was incredibly strict. Non-members couldn't even get past the door. Victoria was a long-standing member. We occasionally went together. Sometimes she'd give the rare guest invitations to important business partners, or, as a very high honor, to a select few core executives within the group. But to Ethan Larkin, an assistant who had just arrived, and letting him bring friends? Zachary continued. Ethan Larkin seemed quite pleased. He posted photos on his social media feed, visible only to a select group. And some colleagues saw them and are gossiping privately, and saying President Quinn really gives him special treatment, and that he's already entered her inner circle. My heart sank, a chill spreading through me. What on earth was Victoria playing at? Did she casually bestow this symbol of status and connection, this and privilege, upon a young male subordinate? This went beyond simply crossing boundaries. Had she forgotten her promise? Or did she simply not care? Ethan's showboating added fuel to the fire. His petty intentions were crystal clear. Trying to elevate his status, making others think he had a special relationship with Victoria. Fine. If you want to play the privilege game, then I'll show you what real privilege looks like. I picked up the phone and called my father's secretary, Lawrence Lee, a senior executive at the Sterling Group. "Secretary Lee, do me a favor. On the Summit Private Club, book all guest passes for the next month, along with several key exclusive booking slots. To it under the Sterling Group's name. Say it's a benefit for group executives and their families. Sonny can release the news publicly, make it high profile." Lawrence Lee acted immediately. The Sterling family's power and influence were more than sufficient. The Summit Club was naturally happy to grant this favor. Soon the news spread. Sterling Group had booked out the Summit Club's main resources for the near future as a reward for its executive team. Suddenly, Sterling Group's grand gesture became the talk of the town, and Ethan Larkin's and precious invitation instantly became meaningless, even laughable. When the entire Sterling Group executive team could freely bring their families, what did his little and special treatment amount to then? His planned display of status and implication completely backfired, making him a laughingstock instead. Word was, when he tried to take his friends there on the intended day, he found he couldn't book any decent spot. All the prime times and areas were reserved by Sterling. He ended up leaving crestfallen. This was my way of telling everyone, especially Victoria and Ethan Larkin, who truly held the resources and power in this circle, who was the rightful master of the Quinn household, by name and by right. This time, I chose to pull the rug out from under them. No direct confrontation, yet more powerful than any argument. 5. My counterattack had a significant effect. Ethan Larkin visibly deflated at the company. The murmurs of admiration and envy that had previously surrounded him turned into subtle mockery and distancing. The fragile halo of unspecial status he had just begun to build was ruthlessly shattered by me. A few days later, Victoria came home looking grim. She walked in radiating suppressed anger, but I didn't give her a chance to erupt, merely asking calmly what she wanted for dinner. My composure seemed to take her aback. The accusations she had prepared died on her lips. She just loosened her collar irritably. Whatever. The atmosphere that evening was tense. I knew Ethan Larkin must have gone to her complaining. Sure enough, the next day I heard a more detailed version from Zachary. Apparently, Ethan had sought out Victoria, looking aggrieved, his eyes red-rimmed, appearing pitiful and helpless. He claimed he was just happy to get the invitation, wanting to experience the atmosphere, with no ulterior motives. He didn't know why Mr. Sterling would do such a thing, mobilizing vast resources just to target a junior assistant like him. Now he couldn't hold his head high at the company. Colleagues were laughing at him behind his back. He felt deeply wronged and upset. His words painted him as an innocent victim, and me as someone making a mountain out of a molehill, petty and vindictive. Zachary hadn't found out Victoria's reaction, but I could guess, given her inexplicable protective instinct towards the underdog. Especially when the person appeared so helpless, she most likely believed him, and would feel I had gone too far. I sneered inwardly. Ethan Larkin's theatrics weren't sophisticated, but they often worked on people like Victoria. She was always easily swayed by appearances, especially when her pitiful, protective instincts were triggered. 6 that weekend, Victoria said to me. Sincere, tonight, Ethan will be stopping by. I was reading a financial magazine. I looked up at her words, my gaze devoid of warmth. What for? He wants to apologize to you in person. Victoria sounded hesitant. Odd about the club incident last time, he feels you misunderstood, and so I think it's best if everyone clears the air to avoid awkwardness at the company later. I put down the magazine. What did I misunderstand? That he was flaunting the privilege you gave him everywhere? Or that you intended to use this to boost his status? Victoria looked uncomfortable. Sincere, it's not what you think. Giving him the invitation was partly a reward for his recent hard work. And partly, I wanted him to gain some exposure, which would help his career. And I really had no other intentions. I stood up. Whether you had other intentions or not, you know best. Since you want him to come, let him come. As it happens, I have a few things to say too. That evening, Ethan Larkin arrived as expected. Dressed in a well-fitting light gray suit, hair meticulously styled, he looked sharp. His eyes were still slightly red, as if he'd struggled to contain his emotions. Upon seeing me, he immediately bowed slightly, his voice apologetic. Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry. At about last time, I was wrong. When I shouldn't have posted those photos online and caused misunderstandings. Since I was just genuinely excited, I didn't think it through. Please forgive me. He put on an act of sincere repentance. If I didn't know his character, I might almost have been fooled by his earnest display. Victoria looked at me expectantly, hoping I would accept the apology. I ignored Ethan Larkin and looked at Victoria instead. An apology isn't necessary. Whether I accept it or not is unimportant. I turned to Ethan Larkin, my gaze sharp. To Mr. Larkin, I want you to understand something. Quinn Corp, do your job properly. Don't covet what doesn't belong to you, and certainly don't try to challenge boundaries you shouldn't. Then I looked back at Victoria, my tone resolute. On my boundaries, I made them perfectly clear last time. I don't want any more ambiguous actions that blur the lines. If there's a next time, you'll bear the consequences yourselves. With that, I ignored their stiff expressions and walked straight up the stairs. 7. After that night, the atmosphere between Victoria and me dropped to freezing point. Though we still lived under the same roof, communication dwindled. When we did speak, it was usually about trivial daily matters. Before bed one night, we argued again. She accused me of being too harsh towards Ethan Larkin. Even if he made a mistake, you shouldn't have been so overbearing. And the club incident, you were too high profile. Unusing so many resources like that was a complete waste. I was in the study reviewing documents. I looked up at her words. Waste? I closed the file, my tone laced with sarcasm. Victoria Quinn, you still think the problem is me wasting resources? And not you, casually giving away a privilege that should belong to us as a couple, or at least be under my control. To a scheming outsider? Victoria raised her voice. Tonight's different, and told you. It was a reward for an outstanding employee, and we've given summit invitations to others before, I retorted. Outstanding employee? What has Ethan Larkin done? Does he deserve it? Victoria Quinn, can you honestly say you didn't have other motives? My question left her momentarily speechless. She tried to defend herself. I just felt it wasn't easy for him as a newcomer, and his superior, showing some extra consideration is normal. Her tone even hardened. I will continue to look out for him as appropriate in the future. As president of the company, I believe I have that authority, I said calmly. And I also need to reconsider whether there's any point in continuing this marriage. Victoria stared at me, eyes wide with shock. Her face instantly turned ugly, her voice changing pitch, sincere. After all these years together, you'd say something like that so casually over this? I met her furious gaze. It's you who made me feel that I'm not irreplaceable in your heart. Since that's the case, of course, I must seriously consider whether I should persist. Seeing the determination in my eyes, she seemed to panic, her chest heaving violently. Finally, as if deflated, she said stiffly, I promise you I'll keep my distance from Ethan Larkin from now on. Outside of work, there will be no more unnecessary contact.
Sarah, you satisfied?
Don't talk about divorce anymore. She gritted her teeth as if making a huge concession, but I knew this was just a temporary truce. Victoria reluctantly agreed to my demand. She seemed to intentionally keep some distance from Ethan Larkin, at least within the company. But this didn't change Ethan's situation. After the Privilegin incident, life at the company was already difficult for him. Zachary was a smart and loyal subordinate. He understood my intentions. Although I never gave explicit instructions, Zachary always found ways to create minor difficulties for Ethan Larkin at work. Not outright bullying, but enough to make him feel pressured and isolated. Ethan Larkin's plan to climb the ladder using Victoria had failed. Instead, his previous boasting had attracted considerable jealousy and ostracism. His work suffered from frequent errors, and his mood darkened. He looked somewhat worn down, having lost his initial spirited confidence. I was aware of this, but I didn't intervene or stop it. This was the path he chose. He had to bear the consequences. The turning point came one afternoon. Victoria was visiting a department and happened to walk in as Ethan Larkin was being harshly criticized by his direct supervisor for a work mistake. The supervisor was a company veteran, strict and quite blunt in his speech. Ethan Larkin stood there, pale-faced, lips tightly pressed together, looking utterly wretched. Victoria witnessed this scene firsthand. According to bystanders, President Quinn's expression turned very sour, but she only cast a cold glance at the veteran employee before leaving without a word. But I knew this scene had struck the softest yet most stubborn corner of Victoria's heart. That shadow concerning her late younger brother. She always felt her brother had suffered injustice and unfairness, leading to his tragic end. She had an almost obstinate urge to defend young men who seemed defeated or in need of protection, especially if this young man, in her eyes, bore some resemblance to the brother in her memory. Ethan Larkin's embarrassment and silence hit her trigger point precisely. The scales within her tipped once again. 9 that evening, Victoria returned home radiating hostility. "Sincere Sterling," she practically snarled. "Oh, do you have to push people this far to be satisfied?" I frowned. "Oh, what are you talking about?" she retorted angrily. "Ain't you know exactly what I'm talking about? What did he do that was so wrong, for you to suppress him like this within the company? Did you see how humiliated he was today?" The state he was in reminded me of my brother. She blamed the so-called ostracism Ethan faced entirely on me, even bringing her brother into it. Anger flared in me too. Whatever Ethan Larkin encounters at the company is due to his own competence and behavior. Where did you see me ordering anyone to bully him? And stop bringing up your brother. Ethan Larkin is your subordinate, not a substitute for your brother, and your misplaced protective instincts are completely misguided." She scoffed. "Oh, my protective instincts? I think you're just ruthless, the great scion of the Sterling family, used to being high and mighty. Can't stand seeing others strive. Can't tolerate the slightest setback. Is it that everyone less fortunate than you must be trampled underfoot?" And her words were like daggers, stabbing deep into my heart. I looked at this woman hurling vicious accusations at me because of an outsider. Was this really the wife I had loved so sincerely? I lost the energy to even argue back, feeling only absurdity and exhaustion. A few days later, I heard Victoria had transferred Ethan Larkin to the president's office as her special assistant. As for the supervisor who had once sharply criticized Ethan Larkin, he was soon reassigned to an insignificant department under some pretext, and Zachary, my assistant, was also moved by Victoria from his position where he could access core information. Victoria had made her stance clear through her actions. She chose to protect Ethan Larkin, dealing with those she perceived as having bullied him. She was making a statement to me. The Cold War between us escalated completely. Victoria moved into the guest room. Later, she started spending most of her time at her apartment near the company. I didn't ask her to stay, nor did I question her. Not having to face her unjust accusations, I actually felt a sense of relief. But she didn't stop challenging my boundaries. She began having Ethan Larkin handle more of her personal affairs. She had him coordinate with the family driver and housekeeper, arrange her private schedule. She even sent him to our home to pick up or drop off her personal belongings. Once Ethan Larkin let himself in using the passcode. He claimed President Quinn had asked him to retrieve a file she forgot at home, along with some changes of clothes. Although he stood just inside the doorway, his posture still deferential. His eyes held a barely perceptible glint of smugness and testing. I had the housekeeper give him the items, not exchanging a single word with him myself. Closing the door, I felt a profound sense of powerlessness. "Victoria, must you keep prodding me like this?" After that, I refused all her attempts at communication. I ignored her calls, disregarded her messages. Since she chose to protect that outsider at my expense, so be it. 11 Victoria's distance and Ethan Larkin's rise naturally didn't escape notice. Ethan began subtly showcasing his working closeness with Victoria, sometimes posting a photo from the office during late hours on social media, captioned with something like "working hard with the boss, fulfilling," sometimes dropping hints in company conversations about his involvement in one of President Quinn's key decisions, or occasionally mentioning some of President Quinn's personal preferences offhandedly. He was no longer boasting directly like before, but using more veiled methods to invite speculation. I remained indifferent to it all. I stopped paying attention to Ethan Larkin's latest schemes, nor did I dwell on Victoria's attitude. When disappointment reaches its peak, all that remains is cold clarity. I began reviewing business dealings related to Quinn Corp, looking for competitive angles. I needed to prepare an exit strategy for myself. Victoria thought sacrificing me could buy her the peace or a protection she desired. Ethan Larkin thought he had won. Very well. Sooner or later I would make them pay the price. 12. Another Quinn family dinner arrived. Eleanor Quinn specifically called me, her tone gentle, insisting I attend. I knew she wanted to mend the relationship between Victoria and me, so I agreed. As usual, I went directly to Victoria's office, planning to head to the Quinn residence with her. When I reached the top floor, her secretary informed me President Quinn was in the private lounge. I walked towards that familiar door. This time, it was closed. I knocked. Victoria's voice came from inside. "Come in." Pushing the door open, I once again saw the person I didn't want to see. Victoria was sitting on the sofa, reading a document, and Ethan Larkin was sitting right beside her, reporting on work. That spot used to be mine. Hearing the door open, both looked up simultaneously. Seeing it was me, Victoria's expression turned cool. "Hey, have a seat here for a moment. I still have some things to finish." I didn't sit. I just stood there, watching them. Victoria frowned and gestured for Ethan Larkin to get up. Ethan hesitated. "President Quinn, there are still some final data points left to report," Victoria said lightly. "Let's go to a private booth at the campus cafe and continue the report there." Then she said to me, "Only you can rest here. Meet me at the campus entrance in 20 minutes. She left me in this, her most private lounge. Then took Ethan Larkin to a cafe booth for a private meeting. But what could I say? Didn't Victoria leave the president's lounge for me? I had to admit, Victoria certainly knew how to humiliate me. I watched their departing backs. Victoria didn't even glance back at me. As Ethan Larkin passed me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile seemed to touch his lips. I sighed at my treatment, even letting out a small laugh. I calmly accepted it all. 13. On the way to the Quinn residence, Victoria and I exchanged almost no words. She must have known what her earlier actions meant to me, but she didn't care, even casually bringing up the importance of tomorrow's meeting, as if taking Ethan Larkin to the cafe to hear his report was the most normal work procedure imaginable. I just silently watched the scenery outside the window, my decision already made. The atmosphere at the Quinn family dinner maintained its usual surface harmony. Eleanor Quinn tried to create conversation topics between Victoria and me, attempting to ease the tension. Arthur Quinn discussed company matters with Victoria. I ate quietly, occasionally responding to Mrs. Quinn's remarks. After dinner, everyone sat in the living room drinking tea and chatting. Victoria's phone suddenly rang insistently. She answered it, said a few words, and her face changed dramatically. "What? How could this happen? Have you found out who did it?" Her voice grew louder, filled with disbelief and angry shock. After hanging up, she immediately received several messages. She read them quickly, her fingers turning white from the force of her grip. Eleanor Quinn asked worriedly, "Victoria, what's wrong?" Victoria looked up, staring intently at me. Her eyes were filled with shock, fury, and a trace of bewilderment. Our group's major development project on the east side. Her voice was somewhat hoarse, and most critical parcel of land was snatched out from under us. And one of our key partners suddenly announced their withdrawal. One have turned around and partnered with our main competitor instead. She paused, struggling to utter the last few words. And rumor has it, the Sterling Group was behind it. All eyes instantly focused on me. Eleanor Quinn looked at me, stunned. Arthur Quinn's brow furrowed. Victoria stared at me with complex emotions. "Sincere, tell me this isn't true. It's just a misunderstanding, right?" I met her gaze calmly, even with a slight smile. "It's true. Sincere did it." 14. "Why?" Victoria's voice was ragged. "Sincere, why would you do this? When that project is incredibly important to Quinn Corp. Do you know what this means for the group? We're husband and wife. How could you? Husband and wife?" I cut her off, my tone icy. "So when you allowed that man to slowly erode our trust and boundaries, step by step, then you let him freely invade my private space, even my home? When you turned on me with harsh words, even publicly undermining my people, just to protect him. Did you ever think then that we were husband and wife?" I looked directly at Victoria. "When you let him invade my life, trample my boundaries. So I'll let you taste what it feels like to be stabbed in the back by someone closest to you. One love is gone. I have to protect my own interests, don't I? Victoria retorted heatedly. I didn't betray you. My relationship with Ethan is purely professional. How could you do something like this because of these misunderstandings? Tince's business. This isn't a game. 10 misunderstandings? I scoffed. The hurt you caused me, was that fake? Once trust is destroyed, it can't be recovered. I stood up, looking at her and stating, word by word, Victoria Quinn, let's get a divorce. Having said this, I straightened my back and walked out of the Quinn family home. At that moment, I felt clearer and lighter than ever before. 15 Victoria chased after me. She grabbed my arm, preventing me from getting into my car. Sincere, let's go home and talk and can't just leave like this. Her voice held pleading, even panic. I shook her hand off. Which home? The one you've allowed outsiders to enter freely? Or the one where you accused me just to protect someone else? But she insisted on pulling me into her car. We sped back to the home we once shared. Opening the door, the living room felt somewhat empty. Some of my personal belongings had already been packed and removed by me earlier. Seeing the sparse living room seemed to agitate Victoria further. She whirled around, grabbing my shoulders. Sincere, don't do this to me. Her eyes were filled with devastation, and no, I was wrong. I was wrong. I shouldn't have indulged Ethan, making you feel wronged. I shouldn't have said those hurtful things. I just felt he was like my brother. Insha, I apologize. I'm apologizing to you. Please don't leave me. Don't talk about divorce, okay? Her eyes welled up. The usually strong woman looked so vulnerable now. In the past, I might have softened, but now I just looked at her calmly. Victoria Quinn, it's too late. Your indulgence of Ethan Larkin completely destroyed my feelings for you and the last shred of hope I had for this marriage. And as for Ethan Larkin resembling your brother, I shook my head, finding it utterly absurd. I am not a substitute for your brother, and neither is Ethan Larkin. So you can't project your guilt about your brother onto others, and use that as an excuse to hurt the person closest to you. One in business matters, I continued. It's just my way of protecting myself and ending this mistaken relationship. And you pushed me here step by step. You destroyed everything between us with your own hands. There's really no going back for us. I gently pushed her away. Let's just let each other go, Victoria. 16 Victoria didn't agree to the divorce. She started trying various ways to win me back. She transferred Ethan Larkin out of the president's office. Soon after, she found an excuse to fire him completely. The move was swift and decisive, as if wanting to sever all ties immediately. She started coming home frequently. Even though I was cold towards her, she persisted in staying. She would try cooking dishes I had mentioned liking before, buy books I had casually said I enjoyed. She would wait up for me when I worked late, just like she used to. Once, she came home completely drunk. She stood outside my door, calling my name over and over, begging for forgiveness. But the damage was done. The trust shattered. No amount of reconciliation attempts felt anything but hollow. During my persistent push for a divorce, Ethan Larkin actually sought me out. He looked much shabbier, his eyes filled with resentment and bitterness. Gone was his former composure and decency. His tone was sharp, sincere, sterling. You must be pleased with yourself, huh? When you ruined everything for me just because I got in your way. You think you've won. Victoria doesn't even love you, she just... I cut him off coldly, Mr. Larkin, you chose this path yourself. Son, you tried to take shortcuts, coveting things that don't belong to you, so you must bear the consequences. As for Victoria and me, it's none of your business. I paused, looking at his pale, distorted face. Instead of resenting others here, perhaps you should reflect on why you ended up in this position. With that, I walked straight past him. His resentful shouts followed me. 17. Regardless of Victoria's efforts, I insisted on the divorce. Meanwhile, some of my strategic business moves continued to exert pressure on Quinn Corp. After several months of stalemate, Victoria finally realized that the marriage was truly beyond repair. The light in her eyes gradually dimmed, and she looked much more haggard. Finally, she agreed to the divorce. On the day we signed the papers, Victoria and I sat opposite each other in silence. The moment my pen left my name on the document, I felt a wave of relief. This marriage, which had drained my energy and filled me with disappointment and pain, had finally come to an end. Walking out of the registry office, Victoria stood behind me and called my name. Sincere. Her voice was choked with emotion. I didn't turn back, just said softly, "Goodbye, Victoria Quinn." Then I walked towards my car. From this moment on, our lives would head in different directions. 18 after the divorce, news about Ethan Larkin gradually surfaced. To completely distance herself, Victoria offered him no help after firing him. Due to the scandal of interfering in his superior's marriage and causing significant turmoil, his reputation in the industry was completely ruined. Virtually no reputable company would hire him. I heard he drifted between several short-lived jobs. Eventually, he left the city. The ambitious young man who once dreamed of reaching the sky in a single bound ultimately paid a heavy price for his greed and scheming. Victoria's life also underwent significant changes. For her, losing me wasn't just losing a husband. It meant the long-standing business alliance between the Quinn and Sterling families suffered irreparable cracks. While it didn't cause Quinn Corp to collapse immediately, the company faced numerous setbacks in its subsequent development. She herself became more withdrawn and hardened. She poured almost all her time into work. She later tried contacting me a few times through mutual friends, but I chose to avoid or decline each time. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed. As for me, having completely broken free from that suffocating past, I embraced my new beginning. Using the assets from the divorce settlement and the resources of the Sterling family, I successfully launched several independent investment projects. I carved out a brand new world for myself. My life became free and fulfilling, never lacking admirers or partners. But I preferred my current state of independence. I began planning new business ventures, exploring a wider world, making like-minded friends, broadening my horizons. I became the person I truly wanted to be. End. Chapter 1. To satisfy her boy toy's ambition of becoming a vice president, my wife faked amnesia after a supposed car accident and demanded my termination. As I passed by her office, I overheard her lover say to her, "Aren't you afraid your husband will wash his hands of you if you do this?" My wife, however, was unconcerned. "It's only for 7 days. When the time comes, I'll just say my memory has returned. He's not going to blame a patient, is he?" I stopped in my tracks but didn't expose her lie. The next day at the conference table, my wife slammed her hand down and declared that her boy toy was her real husband. She ordered me to get out of the company and hand over all my projects. Every employee stared at me, waiting for me to put a stop to her outrageous behavior, but I offered no resistance. I simply signed the resignation agreement. What she didn't know was that the project deadline was only 7 days away, and the client would only work with me, the core team member. In 7 days, not only would her wish not come true, but she would also be facing astronomical damages and the threat of jail time. Chapter 1. You can leave, but you have to delete the contact information of all clients and colleagues. Those are company assets, and you have no right to take them. I was just about to walk out when Eason Miller, my wife's boy toy, blocked my path. Having managed this company for years, I knew perfectly well that no such rule existed. He was deliberately targeting me. I turned to look at my wife, Victoria Wainwright. "Is this your idea too?" Victoria stared at me, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, before she gave a cold nod. If I really deleted those contacts, there would be no turning back. She was certain I wouldn't have the heart to leave, which was why her attitude was so unyielding. It wasn't surprising she thought that way. We had been married for 7 years and had no children. The company was our child, and I cherished it even more than she did. I worked from dawn till dusk, hustling for business, meticulously dedicated, never daring to slack off for a moment. Last week, during a meeting, she proposed promoting Eason Miller to head of the tech department, bypassing all normal procedures. The company veterans, wanting to do her a favor, offered a few half-hearted compliments about Eason, and the motion was about to pass. I was the only one who, after assessing Eason's skills and finding them completely inadequate, ignored Victoria's pride and vetoed her proposal. She knew very well that I would never allow her to run the company into the ground. So this time, to get Eason what he wanted, she had resorted to this melodramatic amnesia stunt to force my hand. Seeing us argue, my colleagues flocked over to mediate.
Mr. Clark, please calm down. Miss Wainwright is just sick.
As her husband, you need to be more understanding and patient with her when she's so vulnerable. Buoyed by their words, Victoria declared sternly, "My husband is my everything. In this company, anyone who opposes my husband is opposing me." The colleagues chuckled at this and nudged me playfully. "See, Mr. Clark? Your wife still loves you very much. She's just sick right now and has mistaken someone else for you." I felt their envious gazes, but I couldn't bring myself to smile. The reality was the complete opposite of what they saw. Victoria and I were married, and on the surface we were civil and respectful. But whenever a conflict arose, she would always pressure me to compromise and back down. Regardless of who was right or wrong, or the situation, she always stood against me. We had fought about it countless times, but she always said that I was family. No matter how much we argued outside, we could always make up at home. Outsiders were different. If they got truly angry, there was no chance of reconciliation. Although it always left a bad taste in my mouth, I'd heard it so many times I started to believe there was some logic to it. But now, seeing her throw away all principles and standards for Eason Miller, I finally understood. When you truly love someone, your first instinct when they are wronged is to defend them, not to coldly calculate the pros and cons. As I was lost in thought, Eason kicked over a nearby chair. "Sincere Clark, you shameless old man, Victoria's husband is me. If you spout any more nonsense, I'll tear your mouth apart." He pointed a finger at me, screaming as if I were the one wrecking his home. Victoria witnessed it all but said nothing. She just stood silently behind Eason, acting as his backup. I forced a faint smile. "Fine, I'll delete them now." With that, I took out my phone, posted a status update announcing my resignation, and raised my hand to deactivate my work account. Realizing I was serious, Victoria suddenly panicked and rushed to stop me. "Forget it, considering you're a long-time employee, you don't have to delete them. Just go." All the colleagues breathed a sigh of relief. But Eason stomped his foot in dissatisfaction. "Honey, as the vice president, don't I even have that much authority?" Victoria, who usually indulged Eason's every whim, shot him a warning look this time, signaling him to stop causing trouble. Then, softening her expression, Victoria transferred $50,000 to my account and made a promise. "Don't worry, the company won't let its dedicated employees down. Even though you've resigned, you'll get every penny you're owed. It just needs a little time. As for your severance package, I'll give you an answer in 7 days. For now, go home and rest." She thought I was still oblivious to her faked amnesia. She imagined that in 7 days she could use her illness as an excuse, apologize, beg for forgiveness, and everything would go back to normal. But this hands-off boss had no idea that the deadline for our most critical project was only 7 days away. The project involved a massive sum of money. If we failed to deliver on time, or if there were any issues with the project, she would be liable for a colossal breach of contract penalty. In the past, for the stability of the company and our future, I would have swallowed my pride and endured the pain alone. But I was tired. So incredibly tired. The company, and her, I was done with both. Instinctively, Victoria reached out to straighten my tie, then remembered her act and awkwardly dropped her hand. I glanced at my phone and rejected the transfer. I went into her contact details and deleted the nickname, "My dear baby Victoria," without a second thought. After doing all that, I looked at her calmly and said, "Victoria Wainwright, let's get a divorce." Chapter 2. Victoria froze, blurting out, "You want a divorce? Why?" The words had barely left her mouth when she realized her mistake. She quickly corrected herself. "A divorce? You must be joking. My husband is Ethan. How could I possibly have been married to you?" Watching her clumsy performance, I couldn't be bothered to expose her lie or waste my breath arguing. I decided to play along with her script. "I tricked you into signing the papers. Let's go and get it undone now." Ethan's face lit up with glee. "It's about time, let's go right now," he urged. Victoria hesitated, frowning. Ignoring the holes in my story, she tried to brush it off. "Forget it, this is all a bit strange. I'll make a decision later." I was confused. Didn't she like Ethan? I was offering to step aside and give them my blessing, so why was she reluctant? In the past, I would have demanded to know why. I would have pathetically asked her if she had ever loved me at all. Now, I couldn't be bothered to guess her motives. I just wanted the divorce finalized as quickly as possible. I raised an eyebrow at her, fanning the flames. "You don't want a divorce? Are you still hung up on me?" Ethan immediately tugged at Victoria's sleeve with a wounded expression. "Honey, aren't I the husband you love most? How could you be married to someone else?" Under our combined pressure, Victoria had no choice but to agree. When the three of us arrived at City Hall, just as we reached the entrance, Victoria suddenly swayed her head as if a familiar sight had jogged her memory. She took my hand. "This place looks so familiar." I remember now. On New Year's Eve, you and I stood in a long line right here to get our marriage license. She knew that day was the happiest day of my life. She thought that by bringing up our happy memories, I wouldn't have the heart to go through with the divorce. After all, that was her go-to move every time she made me angry. But on that day, I had not only overheard her plan to fake amnesia, but I had also heard what she really thought about our marriage. What's so romantic about it? The only reason I chose to marry him on the last day of the year was because I had promised I would. But I really wasn't willing to spend the rest of my life with someone I don't love. So I dragged it out until the very last day when I finally made up my mind. Besides, marrying anyone is just getting by. He was well off and could help me. And he's a nice person, a very suitable marriage partner. Standing outside that door, listening to her praise, my heart sank to the depths. I thought we had love. For her, it was nothing but a transaction. No wonder that after the company started to take off, she became so fixated on money and power, refusing to let me have any control. She was guarding against me all along. My mind had wandered. Victoria tugged my hand, asking if I remembered. I was exhausted from this marriage of mutual suspicion. Cutting my losses was the best choice for me. I shook my head and said dismissively, "No, you probably hit your head in the car accident. It's just a false memory." Victoria's smile froze on her face, seeing that even her attempts at flattery had no effect, and then thinking about how I, her husband, refused to be patient with her while she was a patient. Her anger flared. She hooked her arm through Ethan's, lacing their fingers together. "You're right. None of that was real. My only husband is Ethan Miller. As soon as we're divorced, Ethan and I are getting married." She stomped her foot and walked in with Ethan, radiating a bliss that suggested she was there for a wedding, not a divorce. I had no energy to play along with her drama and followed them inside. Just after we registered, we were ushered into a counseling room. Victoria sat right down in Ethan's lap, took out some grapes she'd bought on the way, and began peeling them, feeding them to him one by one. She thought this display would make me jealous. On the contrary, it only reminded me of the cool, reserved Victoria I once knew. In public, she wouldn't even hold my hand, always saying it was improper to be so clingy in front of everyone. Now, she was a completely different person, so uninhibited it was embarrassing to watch. Even the counselor couldn't stand it. Coupled with my firm attitude, we were quickly moved into the divorce proceedings. My expression remained cold throughout, which clearly annoyed Victoria. She gave me the silent treatment in a fit of pique, and we finished the process quickly. Walking out with the divorce certificate in hand, I let out a long sigh of relief. The dark cloud that had been hanging over my head finally began to dissipate. I hailed a cab, preparing to head home. Eason leaned in and saw the address I'd entered. He instantly flew into a rage. Home? You two are divorced. That's not your home anymore. Pack your things and get out. Now Victoria stood to the side and smirked. That's right. Kick the outsider out. Honey, you can move in. She was kicking me out to make room for Eason. No normal man could accept that, and the old me wouldn't have either. But now, I just gave a detached nod. Fine. I'll move out right away. I booked a hotel from the cab. Once I got home, I began to seriously pack my things. The situation had spiraled far beyond Victoria's control. For once, she backed down. Pretending to have regained a sliver of memory, she held up our wedding photo and asked Sincere, "When did we take this picture?" Without looking up, I continued stuffing my clothes into a suitcase and replied flatly, "It's fake. I photoshopped it." That sentence was the last straw. It completely infuriated Victoria. She grabbed my suitcase and started throwing my clothes out the door, one by one. Get out now." She slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Shaking my head, I silently picked up my clothes from the floor, dusted them off, and stuffed them into my bag. Inside, Eason's anxious voice could be heard. "Sis, this is all my fault. I shouldn't have been so insistent on becoming a VP. Seeing you two divorce, I feel really terrible about it. Maybe I should go and clear things up with him." Victoria composed herself and comforted him. "It has nothing to do with you. It's Sincere who's being petty, holding a grudge against a sick person. Let's just ignore him. I'll spend these 7 days with you, and we'll deal with it later. Sincere is easy to win over. I just have to bat my eyelashes, and he'll come running back." I carried my things into the elevator. She was sorely mistaken. This time, it was a real separation. There was no possibility of reconciliation. Chapter 3. The days after separating from Victoria were blissful, though my former colleagues kept messaging me. Today they must have been getting desperate because one of them called me directly. "Mr. Clark, you have to come back. The project is at its final deadline." I was about to refuse when I heard a commotion and the sound of a phone being snatched. A moment later, Eason's angry voice came through. "Sincere Clark, you've been fired from the company. Mind your own damn business." My colleague was furious. "Eason Miller, what are you doing? Don't you realize that if this project fails, the company will have to pay a fortune in damages?" Eason was dismissive. "What's the panic? I'm almost done with the draft. It'll be submitted in a few days." My colleague's shocked voice came through again. "That's insane. We can't trust your work. Besides, the client specifically requested Mr. Clark for the design. This is fraud. Where's Ms. Wainwright?" "I need to speak with Ms. Wainwright." Eason's threatening voice followed. "Sis is still sick. If you dare go gossiping to her, don't you worry, I'll have all of you fired." Just as I heard that, the call was disconnected. But I could guess the outcome. With my case as a precedent, they wouldn't dare make a move. They would just have to endure it. I shook my head, deciding not to think about it anymore. I truly let go of the company. I had been so busy with work before. Now that I was free, I finally had time to hang out with my friends. We spent our days drinking and having fun, forgetting all my troubles. On the 7th day, I was dressed in a suit, holding a groom's boutonniere, on my way to a friend's wedding. As I walked in, I texted my friend. The boutonniere was left in the car. "I found it, bringing it to you now." I had just finished when I heard a familiar voice. "Thank you all for coming to Eason's and my wedding." I spun around to see Victoria in a wedding dress, arm in arm with Eason, greeting guests. Outside the banquet hall was a large wedding portrait of them. Eason spotted me first. He grabbed Victoria's chin and kissed her on the lips. The surrounding guests shrieked with delight, while Victoria shyly hid in his arms. Suddenly she looked up, and her eyes met mine. She froze. When she came to her senses, she shot upright, deliberately putting some distance between herself and Eason. Eason pouted, annoyed that Victoria seemed to be siding with me. He must have thought I was there to crash the wedding. Seeing the crowd, he burst into tears and lunged forward, grabbing my hand and pleading, "Mr. Clark, I truly love Vicky. Please, I'm begging you. Let us be happy." Don't come between us." Victoria raised an eyebrow, about to step in and defend him, when she noticed the groom's boutonniere in my hand. She instinctively assumed I was there to get married, and her eyes suddenly reddened. "Sincere Clark, how could you marry someone else behind my back?" I knew she had misunderstood, but I saw no need to explain. I said coldly, "Miss Wainwright, we are divorced. Please have some self-respect." Victoria looked at me, utterly devastated. The will to continue her act seemed to have vanished. She put on a theatrical show of her memory returning, then grabbed my hand and asked, "Sincere, why am I in a wedding dress? Are you here to marry me again?" As she spoke, she tried to take the boutonniere from my hand to pin it on me. I gripped her hand and said flatly, "Stop pretending. I overheard everything, your whole scheme with Eason to fake amnesia." Meeting the icy look in my eyes, Victoria knew the jig was up. She dropped the act, her face falling. "I only did it because you're so biased against Eason, always suppressing him. I had no other choice, you have no idea. While you were gone, Eason managed the company wonderfully." I sneered. Managed it wonderfully, or covered things up wonderfully. "Did you know that the deadline for the Beacon Industries project is today?" Victoria was stunned. She turned to look at Eason. Eason smiled and explained, "Don't worry, it's all taken care of. No need to trouble you with such a small matter, sis." Then he shot me a provocative look. "I bet you didn't know, Mr. Clark, but I submitted the design drafts a while ago. The client has already started mass production. Sorry to disappoint you by being so competent." Hearing this, Victoria nodded with satisfaction. Just as she was about to say something, her phone rang. She smiled, waving the phone at me. "See? The client is already calling to praise Eason. You really need to reflect on yourself and apologize to him." She triumphantly answered the call and put it on speaker. But what came through was the client's furious roar, "You idiots. We wanted Sincere Clark's design. How dare you pass off some intern's scrap draft as the finished product? This is a severe breach of contract that has caused us massive losses. Get $100 million ready for the damages. We'll see you in court. If you can't pay, you can rot in jail." Chapter 2, Chapter 4. Victoria was so stunned by the verbal assault she froze. How could this happen? We've worked together so many times without a single mistake, she was about to try and explain when the line went dead. I had always been the one to handle these things, she was a complete figurehead. Now, having just boasted about Eason's capabilities, she was faced with a catastrophe. Too embarrassed to ask me for help, she could only turn to Eason with a frown. "What is going on? Didn't you say you had it all handled?" Eason's face was a mask of fury. He ranted, "That guy is such a jerk. I worked so hard on those drafts. How could he say that about me? It's just one small project. If they don't want it, fine." Victoria's eyelid twitched with anger. "That's $100 million penalty. The company wasn't large enough to absorb $100 million loss. On top of that, this disaster would ruin the company's reputation in the industry, making it nearly impossible to land new projects." Even after being berated, Eason maintained a nonchalant attitude. "So what? It's a mere $100 million. Just give it to them." He said it so casually, as if the penalty was a single dollar. But of course, it was the company's money, and Victoria would never have the heart to punish him. For him, there was no personal loss, so naturally he didn't care. His explosive statement was too much for even Victoria to stomach. She cursed herself for having been so foolish as to make Eason a vice president. She had thought, "It's only for 7 days. No matter how bad his management skills were, he couldn't possibly cause any real trouble." She never imagined that this one move would completely alter the course of her life. Eason was still cursing out the client, using every profanity in the book. Victoria couldn't take it anymore and cut him off. "Shut up, didn't I tell you to be meticulous and serious about the company's business? How could you take matters into your own hands and submit your own drafts? You're just an intern," Eason pouted, looking deeply offended. "I'm the vice president. If a VP doesn't even have that much authority, what's the point of being a VP?" Chapter 5. "Besides, sis, all I did was mess up one project. It's not the first time, so why are you being so harsh?" He seemed genuinely aggrieved. rambling on and on with his complaints. Listening to him detail the other projects he'd botched, I had an unexpected epiphany. There was a project I was in charge of before. I had personally supervised it, but the final version that reached the client was completely wrong. Victoria had blamed it all on me, scolding me for days, but I had checked it numerous times, ensuring there were no issues before submission. It turned out that when Eason was submitting the file, he had accidentally deleted the final version. Too scared to ask for another copy, he had taken it upon himself to upload an unrevised draft. The client was furious. None of the requested changes had been made. They went straight to Victoria and demanded an explanation. At the time, Victoria wanted to fire one of my interns as a scapegoat. I refused to allow it. The situation escalated, and as their supervisor, I had to take full responsibility. After all, no matter who made the mistake, it was a failure of my management. I accepted the punishment, a demotion and a pay cut. To salvage the project, I had to grovel and apologize to the client. Drinking so much, I ended up in the hospital 3 times before I managed to fix the situation. Only today did I learn that it was all Eason's fault. Victoria had known the truth all along. She had indulged him, deliberately pinned the blame on me, and forced me to clean up the mess. The current Victoria didn't notice my change in demeanor. After scolding Eason some more, she said with a sigh, "Forget it. Everyone here has seen what you're capable of. I don't expect anything from you." With that, Victoria turned to me, her eyes full of affection. "You're still the best, Sincere. I know you can solve this crisis. No matter how tough the project, no matter how demanding the client, you can always handle it. I was wrong before. Eason is no match for you. My dear husband is the most capable of all." Just as I was about to refuse, Eason started to pout jealously. "Sis, I'm not as bad as you make me sound this time." Victoria didn't coddle him. She scolded him sternly. "That's enough out of you. This whole mess is your fault. I made you a VP so you could have some fun and throw your weight around. With your half-baked skills, did you really think you should be meddling in actual work?" Victoria laid into Eason. For once she was on my side, but I felt no joy. Her praise for Eason was always heartfelt. Her compliments for me were always a means to an end, immediately followed by a request for a favor. I used to love her sweet talk, but now that I saw its true nature, her every action filled me with disgust. When Victoria once again asked for my help, I held up a hand to stop her. "I've already resigned. I have no right to meddle in the company's affairs." Chapter 6. Victoria's face darkened, but she quickly recovered. That was all just a joke. But Eason's behavior that day was truly out of line. "Eason, come and apologize to Sincere, and we'll let this whole thing go." Eason was defiant. "Why should I? I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I apologize?" He looked absolutely determined not to yield. Victoria's voice turned cold as she warned him. "Eason Miller, don't forget who pays for everything. If the company loses too much money, it won't be good for you either. Do you still want that BMW?" At the threat of losing his luxury car, Eason reluctantly mumbled an apology. "I'm sorry. Are you satisfied now?" Victoria was certainly generous with him, even buying him a luxury car. I remembered when I saved up my own money to buy a modest car for commuting, she nagged me for a solid 6 months. "We've only been doing well for a little while, and you're already spending $100,000 on a car. That's such a waste. What's wrong with the old electric scooter I passed down to you? When I was starting the business, I rode that little scooter everywhere. Why can't you?" I remember explaining over and over that I needed a decent car to maintain a professional image when meeting clients, but she was still not satisfied with my answer. She accused me of not spending my money on her. Eventually, I got so tired of her complaining that I took her out and bought her a gold necklace, which finally quieted her down. The contrast made it crystal clear who her true love was, and to think I'd been kept in the dark all this time, only figuring it out recently. I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. Victoria, thinking my slight smile meant I had forgiven her, was about to pull me away when my friend rushed over. "Old pal, I asked you to get the boutonniere. What took you so long? You almost made us late." Victoria suddenly smiled. a wave of relief washing over her. So you weren't marrying someone else? Why didn't you explain that to me? Oh, I get it. You were just trying to make me jealous. Okay. Let's stop this nonsense. We need to handle the company's crisis first. I handed the boutonniere to my friend and shook off Victoria's hand as she reached for me. I have a wedding to attend. You made this mess. You can solve it yourselves. Victoria looked up, annoyed, and snapped at me. Is your friend's wedding more important than the company? Eason and I have both apologized. How long are you going to keep this up? Chapter 7. Her words were so self-righteous. If she hadn't enabled Eason's behavior, would things have ever gotten to this point? I ignored her and just chatted with my friend. Seeing that we were ignoring him, Eason grew angry. Sincere Clark, the day isn't over yet. I'm still your superior. Is this how you treat your boss after all these years of work? Victoria, seeing he was about to start cursing, reprimanded him before softening her tone to me, knowing she needed my help. Fine. I'll attend the wedding with you first. After it's over, we can go deal with the project. With that, she prepared to go and change out of her wedding dress. I raised an eyebrow at her, my patience with her endless pestering at its limit. I had told her so many times, why couldn't she understand? Victoria Wainwright, I divorced you and I resigned from the company. From now on, whatever happens with you or the company, do not bother me. The strange looks from the people around us fell on her, making her uncomfortable. She looked at me awkwardly. It was all just a joke. Why are you taking it so seriously? I laughed. You moved Eason into our home. Was that just a game too? Victoria looked guilty for a moment. It was just an act, she said. She nudged Eason with her elbow. Eason immediately understood his cue. Right, just an act. I've been staying in the guest room the whole time. If you can't stand having me around, brother-in-law, I'll get out right now. He shot me a defiant look. During his time at the house, he had frequently sent me taunting videos, bragging about how well Victoria was taking care of him, making him different fancy breakfasts every day. And Victoria, having blocked my main account, had posted on social media, so happy to be cooking for the one I love most. Yes, I wasn't the one she loved. I was the one who did all the chores, and cooking at home, she never lifted a finger. I shook my head. No need. You're her husband now. It's perfectly reasonable for you to live there. Eason raised an eyebrow. I've already humbled myself. Why are you being so arrogant? Besides, you can yell at me, but Vicky was your wife. How can you not trust her? I replied flatly, don't say that. I'm not the one with a wife who fakes amnesia and brings another man home. Let's just part on good terms. Victoria looked at me with disappointment, tears welling in her eyes. Sincere, you never used to be like this. Did she still not get it? I used to be good to her, to give in to her constantly, because of love. But now I didn't love her anymore. I walked towards the banquet hall with my friend, no longer paying them any attention. Chapter 8. At the wedding, I was busy helping my friend, and he didn't ask me about what had just happened. It wasn't until things settled down that I had a chance to check my phone. I discovered that news of the company's project failure had already spread throughout the industry. Victoria could no longer afford to be idle. She was scrambling to appease the client on one hand and calm down furious shareholders on the other. She had become the one who was constantly on the go. During this time, Victoria sent me messages asking for help, all of which I refused. Finally, I pushed her over the edge. Sincere Clark, I'm giving you a chance to save the day. Don't be so ungrateful. I deleted and blocked her without another thought. The scandal grew bigger and bigger, spreading to a wider audience. For several days in a row, she dominated the headlines. The company's stock price was plummeting. At this point, it wasn't just Victoria who couldn't hold on. The company's shareholders were getting restless too. In my hotel lobby, Victoria appeared with gifts in hand, dragging along the company's senior staff to persuade me. A colleague put his arm around me. Old pal, it's normal for couples to fight. Miss Wainwright knows she was wrong. Please, just forgive her. The company is in a crisis right now and really needs your help. Yeah, you don't want to see the company you built with your own hands go bankrupt, do you? Seeing my old friends begging me, I asked, "Did you all know that Victoria's amnesia was fake?" At my question, everyone fell silent. I could clearly see there was no surprise in their eyes, only regret. I leaned on the table and let out a laugh. So, it wasn't just Victoria who had betrayed me. My colleagues and friends of many years had all helped her deceive me. These people were purely opportunistic. If the company wasn't on the verge of collapse, they would never be here pleading with me. They took turns making excuses for Victoria and pleading her case. Victoria herself was groveling, trying to appease me. I pushed the gifts she brought far away. "You're all so capable, aren't you? Solve it yourselves." Seeing my unyielding attitude, Victoria's face finally turned cold. "Sincere Clark, what good does it do you to ruin the company?" Chapter 9. How ridiculous. I simply didn't bail her out, and she was blaming the company's problems on me. I shook my head. "Victoria, even if the company does well, it doesn't do me much good. I was always on a fixed salary. Not only that, but Victoria was also stingy with my bonuses, claiming that since I was her husband, we shouldn't waste company money. She'd offer to cook me a meal as a reward instead. Yet Eason did nothing, and she found every excuse to give him bonuses. Victoria raised an eyebrow, telling me not to be so stubborn. She assumed I couldn't bear to part with the company I had founded. But I was no longer that idealistic young man. I had become a realist. I picked up my suitcase and showed her a document. "I've already accepted a job offer with this company. As soon as my visa is processed, I'm leaving. You can all give up." After resigning, I had received an offer from an overseas company. They had been trying to recruit me for a while, and I had been very tempted. But at the time, I felt my home was here, and I couldn't just leave my country for a job. But now, my home was gone. The career I had spent years building had been reduced to zero, so without much thought, I accepted the offer. Seeing the job offer, everyone stood frozen in place. Victoria couldn't believe I could be so decisive. She murmured, "Sincere, you're just trying to scare me, right? Didn't you promise you would never leave me? Why did she keep clinging to my vows when she had never kept a single one of her own?" Seeing that their persuasion was futile, everyone looked dejected. I stood up to say my goodbyes. At that moment, Eason rushed out from nowhere and threw a punch at me. I raised my arm and punched him right back. Seeing that we were about to get into a real fight, the others rushed to pull us apart. Eason's eyes were red as he screamed at the top of his lungs, "Sincere Clark, you're a real piece of work. Do you know what's happening? This is blown up. Not only does Sis have to pay the damages, but if this isn't handled properly, she's going to jail. You talk about loving her more than anything, but you're abandoning her to go abroad when she needs you most. You're shameless." Chapter 10. Eason was the one who made the mistake. What right did he have to accuse me? My colleagues, thinking his words were too harsh, began explaining the situation in a jumble of voices. Only then did I learn that in the past 7 days, Eason had been squandering company money.
Now, not only could they not pay the $100 million penalty, but other clients were also terminating their contracts and demanding compensation.
Victoria was already buried in lawsuits. If she couldn't pay the money, she would go to jail, so that's why she was so desperate. The situation had gotten out of control. But what did that have to do with me? I couldn't be bothered to care. Hearing Eason's words, Victoria quickly turned her face away to secretly wipe away her tears. Seeing the change in circumstances, the other colleagues started their persuasion again. Yes, Miss Wainwright was a bit mischievous, but she and Eason are innocent. Nothing happened between them. Can't you just pretend this whole thing never happened? That's right. We're all experienced people here. You have to be a little clueless to get by in life. Don't be so serious. Exactly, you were husband and wife. No matter what, you can't just watch her go bankrupt and end up in jail, can you? Looking at their disgusting, pleading faces, I felt that even arguing with them would dirty my mouth. If this had happened to their own spouses, they probably wouldn't have even a fraction of my composure. They would have already shown up at the door with a knife, screaming about killing the other person's entire family. I shook my head, remaining unmoved. Victoria gritted her teeth and lowered her head to me. Sincere, I was wrong before. I truly know I was wrong. I promise this is the last time. If you can just save me this once, I swear I will come back to our family. If you're not happy, I'll fire Eason right now. I'll never have anything to do with him again. Eason's eyes were red, but he said nothing more. But still, I didn't turn back. There's no need. You should just live a good life with him. Goodbye, everyone. Oh wait, no. Let's make that farewell. Ignoring Victoria's cries, I walked out, hailed a cab to the airport, and boarded a flight to a foreign country. Soon after I had settled in abroad, I received a message from a former colleague. The company had gone bankrupt. Victoria, unable to pay her debts, had all her assets frozen, and she had been sent to prison. As for Eason, all the money and things he had gotten from Victoria were seized to help pay off the debts. I silently turned off my phone, got out of bed and got ready for work. A new day had begun. The end.